Hello, hello, welcome back to the DCAU Book Club streams. Y'all let me know if you can hear me, because for some reason my headphone audio isn't working with Streamlabs, so I'm hoping that doesn't mean that my microphone's not working. I can still hear my little fishy songs, but I can't hear the audio that's supposed to be coming out of Streamlabs, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. But yeah, if y'all can hear me, then good. If you can't, then that's no good. There's 2 of y'all in here at least. So one of y'all's got to let me know. Okay, sweet. Danny says that we can be heard. So today we are going through Mad Love, a novelization by Pat Cadigan and Paul Dini. I'm not entirely sure how involved in this book Paul Dini was, or if his name is just on here for the sake of the fact that he created, the original story. But I picked this up back in 2018 when it first came out. I read the first chapter or so, and it adds a lot of backstory to Harley, like as a kid. I've seen a tweet from Paul Dini where he says that Baby Doll shows up at some point. So I know right off the bat, those are going to be 2 differences from the normal telling of the story. I have a heyo. I have an interactive PDF with me today, so I can easily click in the table of contents and move forward to where we need to go. For those of you who haven't joined us on one of these before, typically what I do is I read a chapter, then I come in here. I accidentally made it its own different window. Oh my god. And it's disappeared altogether. There it is. So I come in here and I catalog things that happen per chapter, character appearances, locations that may have been important objects. More or less, I only really do that when, an object is capitalized. That way we know we have, the official name for it or whatever. Stuff that, might make it not canon. Stuff that references in-show events, mentions of time for timelining stuff. This concrete section is more or less for stuff that had a concrete origin episode, like how we have, villain origin episodes for almost every BTAS villain except for Joker or Penguin, or how we have an origin for the Bat Signal, stuff like that. So we know that at least this has to happen after XYZ kind of stuff. Pop culture references, which, Jesus Christ, after, reading last night's Batman The Adventures Continued, I don't even know that they matter anymore. Weather, if it's snowing or something like that, and or hurricane season, anything like that that's mentioned, and then just general other clues. We've got 34 chapters in this book, so it's gonna be a meaty one. And today we're gonna start off with the prologue and see how far we can get. I'm not sure if it's gonna be like Rise of Sinzu, where we only do 1 chapter an hour, or if it's going to be the Mask of the Phantasm novelization we just did, where we did 3 chapters an hour. but we will find out. It's pretty decent size, font. So I don't think that it's gonna be Sinzu levels. Maybe a nice in between. But yeah, I guess now with all of that out of the way, we can start with the prologue. So let me flip on over there for y'all. If there's any of y'all that intend to read along. Okay, so first off, the book starts off with a little intro thing. It says, "This is for all the women who met Mr. Wrong and said, 'This is the man for me.' Hey, it could have been worse. It could have been forever." And that's from Pat Cadigan. And Paul Dini says, "To Arlene Sorkin for giving Harley Quinn her voice, heart, and soul on screen, and to Pat Cadigan, who gave her the same in this book." So, let's get to the prologue. The story of Harley Quinn begins with a heist in a New York nightclub. Given whom the world knows Harley Quinn to be, this may seem only fitting, perhaps expected. But as it happens, Harley Quinn wasn't involved. She wasn't even there at the time. Nonetheless, each life touches another. Nothing happens in a vacuum. The effects of every deed ripple outward. The nightclub in question was called Pulsar, and it was the place to be after dark on a Friday. Noisy, crowded, jumping, good music, good company, good feelings, good riddance to another work week. It was all so good, nobody noticed the crew breaking into the owner's office. The owner herself was having a good time, not in the club, but several floors up in her private apartment, with a particularly attractive gentleman caller. She didn't worry about being robbed. She had insurance. Robbers, however, don't get insurance of any kind, nor is there any compensation when a job goes wrong, as it did on this night. The robbers cracked the safe, expecting it to be filled with money, bonds, and jewels. Instead, they found the cupboard was bare. Hold on. Okay, got it. So there's just the PDF puts more words on the page. I was very confused. The crew had had a solid plan drawn up for them by an experienced professional as payment for an outstanding debt. Said professional knew all about the safe, the office, and how to avoid Pulsar security. He also knew the owner would be more concerned with running her fingers through the long silky hair of her gentleman caller than running the nightclub. On Friday nights, Pulsar ran itself anyway. You opened the doors, and the wage slaves came in to spend money on drinks and bar snacks till closing at 3 a.m. Other refreshments were also available. Nothing says, "We're having some fun now," like Bolivian marching powder or Super X. But that was someone else's business. Nothing to worry about on a usual night. Let me flip that page over now. No. It seems my PDF reader does not like to flip pages. Unfortunately, the DEA and local law enforcement had picked this night to execute a raid. They swarmed in, killing the buzz along with the music just as the robbers discovered all their efforts had been for nothing. Pointing at the empty safe and shrugging isn't a get out of federal custody free card. The robbers had no choice but to shoot their way out, which was the last thing they wanted to do. Shooting cops was the best way to summon the wrath of the entire NYC Police Department in all its full, unrestrained glory. The feds could have whatever was left, if there was anything left. But nobody wanted to go to jail either. The robbers fled with nothing to show for their efforts, but regret and some painful gunshot wounds for the mob doctor. Harlene Quinzel played no part in this. She was 7 years old, and it was already past her bedtime when the robbers heard the police sirens. The following day, while everyone was lying low and Pulsar's owner was filling out insurance forms and letting her lawyer handle the cops, Harlene Quinzel was at Coney Island with her daddy. So really quick, there are a few things to add in here. Let me add a couple rows in between, just for the sake of it. Okay, so very first we had a mention of Harley Quinn. While she's not here, she's gonna be here in the book, so I'm not even gonna bother saying mentioned. She is here. We had the unnamed owner of Pulsar nightclub. We had owner's gentleman caller. The DEA was mentioned. Let's see, the what else? There was the NYC Police Department. Right, we put organizations in this appearance thing, unless it's like an organization's building, then it goes into the locations. Let's see, was that just nondescript robbers? Go ahead and put them in as well. The crew had a solid plan. Experienced professional. No clue who that experienced professional could be. We might figure out later. But for now, let's just put them in. And I'm pretty sure we got a mention of, what, Mob Doctor? The Mob Doctor. Not to be confused with the Crime Doctor. Did it? I want it to size itself properly. Then locations, we have New York. New York City, I guess. Which implies the existence of New York, the state. Then we had, Pulsar nightclub. Coney Island. And I think those were the big focal points, unless we count like Harley's bed. Right? She was tucked away in bed because she's 7. Or it was way past her bedtime. So, it's implied she has a bed, at the very least. Objects. We had Bolivian marching powder, which I guess, now that I think about it, implies the existence of Bolivia. And we had Super X. Jesus Christ. I hate that, like, sometimes I'll be typing and I just hit the wrong key and I don't notice it until it's inconvenient. Nothing so far to make this, not fit the canon. Time. We had multiple mentions of it being Friday night, right? We had Pulsar. Pulsar was the place to be after dark on a Friday. And that's on page 1. And then we had... There was another mention of it being Friday somewhere. On Friday nights, Pulsar ran itself anyway. That's on page 2. Oh, Jesus Christ. Is the stream running better today than it was last time? If there's anyone in here who was here last week, I tried to clear some space off my computer, but I didn't go nearly as hard as I was hinting at possibly doing. Harley was 7 years old. That's on page 2. A lot of the time, especially as we get further into the book, there's less notes to take because all of our recurring characters will have already shown up and stuff like that. So if this part is boring to you guys, just hang in there. but this is just kind of a behind the scenes on like how we see pop culture. There wasn't really any pop culture. I think there was some weather. I think it was raining or whatever, but rain isn't a big deal. And there weren't really many other clues. So I think we're good there. So let me But yeah, this is basically a behind the scenes on like how we do timeline stuff, how we do Will It Canon stuff. And just general note taking, because of the fact that we want to have the DCAU website instead of a DCAU website. We want to be as meticulous as possible for when that day comes. Better than any wiki and putting our friends' websites out of business. Hold on. Let me hop into the chat real quick. Coney Island exists. Bolivia exists. Impossible. Yes. It's running good. Okay, tight. Yep. Smooth and good. Can't hear background music, though, if it exists. Okay, I turned the background music down because I thought it might be loud because of, it's the only thing I can hear on my headphones, but I'll turn that up. There we go. All right. Let's hit chapter 1. This was the best day ever, and Harleen felt like she'd waited forever for it. She and her daddy had spent a lot more time together back when her parents had only had her, but then her baby brother had come along. The baby was cute, but boy could he cry. Her daddy explained how he was totally helpless and needed a lot of attention. And he was sorry about that, but he and Mommy would make it up to her. She just had to be patient, be a good girl, and help out. So she was patient. She was a good girl and helped whenever Mommy needed her. And right around the time she thought Mommy and Daddy might make things up to her, they brought another baby brother home. Now there were 2 of them, and that's way too many Jedis. And all she could do was go on being good and helping out. But Daddy said they were going to make it up to her. Daddy promised. Then they went to the hospital and brought home yet another baby brother for a grand total of 3. 3 baby brothers. It was hard to believe that her parents really thought her having so many baby brothers was a good idea. But then grown-ups could be so weird. If they'd asked Harleen, she'd have suggested going to the movies or seeing the Ice Capades at Madison Square Garden. But what she really wanted was for Daddy to take her to Coney Island for the day. Just the 2 of them. Daddy never got all bent out of shape about how many hot dogs and caramel apples he ate. And he wasn't afraid to go on the Wonder Wheel with her. When Mommy was there, she'd get after Harleen for dripping mustard on her shirt or having sticky hands from cotton candy or not wanting the rest of the apple after the caramel part was gone. She knew Mommy couldn't help it. It was how mommies were. Daddy was different. But now that they had all those baby brothers, it seemed like he was always working and never got a day off. He would apologize to Harleen. Let me flip the page. Yeah. I guess because it's displaying 2 pages at a time, I have to click it twice. He would apologize to Harleen and tell her they'd have some fun together as soon as he could make the time. Something really, really good. He usually said it as he was going out the door. At least he and Mommy had quit giving her baby brothers. That was something to be glad about. But now Harleen was starting to think that Daddy was working so much, he'd forgotten how to do anything else. And worse, maybe he would rather work than be with her and Mommy and the 3 very loud baby brothers. This morning, she had been resigned to another Saturday changing diapers and pretending she didn't hear Mommy muttering about being trapped, which didn't make any sense because they didn't even have mouse traps. When suddenly, Daddy told her to hurry up and get dressed or they wouldn't get to Coney Island until noon. Harleen had actually wondered if it would really happen, afraid that as soon as they left the house, Daddy would get a call and he'd have to go to work after all, and she'd be marooned on the dark side of disappointment, changing diapers. But she and Daddy rode the Q line on the subway all the way to Coney and got there hours before noon. Daddy told her if he got a work call, he would answer it. He wasn't even going to say the word work for the rest of the day. Oh, he wouldn't answer it. He wasn't even going to say the word work for the rest of the day. And it was a wonderful day. Just her and Daddy riding the carousel, the Wonder Wheel, and the roller coaster, and going through the funhouse. The funhouse had been completely repainted and done over. There was new stuff too, like the big fat cushioned rollers hanging vertically that pushed you through them like you were cookie dough, and a place where sections of the floor moved separately under your feet, going back and forth so you stumbled and staggered, and lots of funny mirrors. Why is my nose so itchy today? Let's see, where was I? Lots of funny mirrors. Lots of funny mirrors that made you look short and squashed, or tall and stretched out, or warped and weird. Even the long slides were new, bigger, and longer. She was too afraid to go down one by herself, so Daddy went with her, holding her tight as she screamed with the thrill of it. For lunch, they had Nathan's hot dogs, washed down with something. I think that's the kind of hot dog that they had in Batman: The Adventures Continues recently. I wonder if that was supposed to be a reference back to this. For lunch, they had Nathan's hot dogs, washed down with something called coconut champagne, which wasn't really champagne, but it sure was sweet. She couldn't finish it. Daddy didn't mind. He couldn't finish his either. Later, when she had a caramel apple for a delayed dessert, he didn't mind her leaving the apple for the birds after all the caramel was gone. He said he didn't want to eat an apple without any caramel either, and they both laughed. Daddy said he couldn't go on any rides after eating, so they played games. Skee ball, ring toss, lobster pot, pyramid smash, and grab-a-duck. Grab-a-duck was best. She and Daddy both won stuffed animals. She won a funny monkey, and Daddy won an ostrich. They were small, but still wonderful because she and Daddy won them together. Daddy asked her to take care of his ostrich for him because he worked so much and he didn't want Ozzy to get lonely. Harleen loved that Daddy had already named him. They were walking past the roller coaster when Daddy stopped and showed her the framework structure, the way the wood board crisscrossed. It was called a lattice, he said, and it made a special pattern of light and shadow. If you stood inside and held very still, you'd be so well camouflaged that you'd practically be invisible to people passing by. Not that you'd ever need to do that, Daddy added as they walked on. Not in a place like Coney Island. Harleen nodded, holding his hand and looking back over her shoulder at the lattice. When the shadow began to stretch and the sunshine turned a soft gold, Harleen thought Daddy would say they should think about going home. But he didn't. Instead, they went to some of the sideshows, where Harleen saw a lady on an electrified throne with thousands and thousands of volts running through it, and she never felt a thing, even though she lit a torch from her tongue. Another lady was so flexible she could twist herself into positions that made Harleen's eyes water. She'd never seen anyone so limber, not even her gymnastics teacher. Then there was a guy who hammered a nail right into his face and didn't even bleed. Daddy took her back to the funhouse after that, and they went down the big slide 5 more times together. By the 5th time, she wasn't scared anymore, and she was shrieking with laughter as she and Daddy sat on the little rug and slid down the long curve. Having his strong arms around her made her feel like nothing bad could ever happen to her. On the way out, she and Daddy opened a door they thought was an exit, and found themselves in a small, stuffy, and very messy room. There were cans of paint and varnish all over the place, like whoever had finished with them had just left them lying around for someone to trip over. Sheets of plywood leaned against one wall. Nearby were big bottles of carpenter's glue, and pieces of blue chalk. A very large sheet of plywood lay over 2 sawhorses with a power saw on top of it. Oh, why is it? Oh, I guess the arrows don't work and I actually do have to click it. There we go. The air was dry and smelled heavily of sawdust, though there were other odors underneath it, wet paint thinner and something like rubber cement, only somehow more intense, like it had a lot more chemicals in it. Harleen felt her stomach turn. "This isn't a nice place," she said unhappily. "No, it's a workroom," Daddy said. "Somebody's got to make the fun stuff." He led her back out the door, shutting it behind them. Harleen looked up at him. "I guess making fun stuff isn't much fun." "You said a mouthful, kid," Daddy chuckled as she pulled him away from the door. That awful chemical smell was still in her nose. She needed fresh air to chase it away. When they did finally get outside, it was dark. Harleen felt a thrill of excitement. It was so late. Mommy always said when the streetlights went on, it was time to go home. If Mommy had been there, Harleen would already have had her bath and be in her pajamas. But Daddy still wasn't in any hurry to get home. Instead, he took Harleen to get something to eat. A real meal, he said. So when Mommy asked if they'd eaten anything besides hot dogs and candy all day, they could tell her they had. So they went to a funny little diner called NY, where all the waitresses had big bouffant hairdos, called everyone hun or sweetie, and popped their gum when they talked in a heavy Brooklyn accent. Harleen thought it was almost as much fun as Coney Island. Daddy let her order a bacon cheeseburger, curly fries, and onion rings, while he had a meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and gravy, and green beans. Mommy made that a lot. Although sometimes Mommy's meatloaf seemed like it was a lot more breadcrumbs than meat. The diner meatloaf smelled awfully good. Harleen felt guilty just thinking it, as if she were being disloyal to Mommy. She thought it was kind of strange for Daddy to order something he could have at home, although she didn't say so. But Daddy seemed to know what she was thinking and said, "I'm just in the mood for meatloaf, and I don't want Mommy to cook an extra meal so late." Well, that made sense, Harleen thought, or as much sense as anything grown-ups did. The way Daddy ate, however, made her wonder. He ate slowly, like he wanted to remember how good it was. He offered her a bite, but Harleen said no thanks. She didn't feel like meatloaf, which made Daddy laugh. Secretly, she was afraid it might taste better than Mommy's. When they were done, Harleen was too full for dessert. Daddy paid the bill and left a big tip for the waitress. "Thanks, sweetie," the waitress said, popping her gum. Her name tag said Millie, and she had the biggest blonde bouffant of all, almost as large as a beach ball. Harleen thought, "You got a big heart, I can tell." Then she turned to Harleen and said, "You take care of him, okay, hun? Make sure he gets home safe." "I sure will, hun. Don't you worry about that," Harleen replied, imitating the woman's thick Brooklyn accent. Everybody around them burst out laughing, but it was good laughing, like for a comedian on TV. Millie kissed the top of her head with a loud smack. "You got a precious little puddin' there," she told Daddy as they left the restaurant. "You're full of surprises, Harleen," her daddy said as he picked her up and carried her toward the subway stop. "Thinking fast is a gift. Something tells me you'll go far." Harleen put her arms around her daddy's neck and rested her head on his shoulder. She really was tired now. This was the perfect end to the best day ever, being carried home in her daddy's strong arms. She was barely aware of going into the subway and getting on the train. Her daddy kept holding her, even after he sat down and the motion of the train rocked her to sleep. Let's see, I just gotta make sure I'm turning the pages at the right spot for you all. She didn't wake up until they were back on the street, and only because she heard a man's voice growl. "So where'd you stash the haul, Nicky?" "Yeah, Nicky, tell us," said another man, also growling. "Inquiring minds want to know." Rubbing her eyes, Harleen raised her head and saw two men standing in front of Daddy, with their arms crossed, looking real mad. Her daddy gave a big sigh. "Come on, guys, I've got my little girl here. Can't this wait till I take her home?" "No can do, Nicky boy," said the first guy, who I just gave the second guy's voice. "We found out the hard way it's a bad idea to wait on anything where you're concerned." And come to find out, this must be around where I stopped reading, because here is my receipt to give Barnes & Noble's feedback that I was using as a bookmark. Like when you told us to wait till Friday, added the second guy. You said we'd get in and out and no one would know. Well, guess what? A big fat payday turned out to be a big fat goose egg. Her daddy put her down then. Even though she was so sleepy, she could hardly keep her eyes open. Harleen hung onto his pant leg, but Daddy gently pried her hands off and made her stand back a few feet. That safe was so bare it was indecent, the first guy was saying. Somebody beat us to the goodies. Only one person could have done that. The only other person what knew about the job. So after we was done shooting our way out and running for our lives, we asked around. And son of a gun, we found out you were there on Thursday having drinks with the broad that owns the joint. I told everyone we should have known better than to trust Slick Nick Quinzel, the second guy said. But calling in a police raid? That was low, even for a worm like you. I had nothing to do with that, Daddy said urgently. I didn't know the DEA was planning a raid. You mean that was just a coinky-dink? The first guy said. Oh, well, that's different. The second guy suddenly stepped forward, and before Harleen quite knew what was happening, he punched her daddy in the face, knocking him off balance so he almost fell. Hey, said the first guy, don't do that. Why not? The other guy asked. I got first dibs. Then he punched her daddy in the face, knocking him to the sidewalk. Harleen screamed for them to stop. They ignored her as they hauled her daddy to his feet. The first guy held him with his arms behind his back so the second one could punch him again and again. She kept on screaming, but it was like they couldn't hear her, like she wasn't even there. I'm getting the cops! She hollered at them and ran back toward the subway, where Mommy said you could find a cop if you needed help. But just as she got to the corner, she saw a patrol car and ran into the street, waving her arms and yelling. Red and blue lights snapped on as it stopped. The cop who got out of the passenger side was a big guy, bigger than her daddy. Trying to pull him up the street was like trying to drag a tree out of the ground. The other one followed slowly in the car, the lights on the roof still flashing red and blue and red and blue. The bad guys were gone by the time they got to her daddy. Harleen felt her heart break at the sight of him lying on the pavement, like a heap of bloody rags. Help him! Help him! She begged as the other cop stopped the car and ran over. He was shorter and a little younger, but he seemed just as solid as his partner. Their expressions were all concerned and worried, the way her mommy was when Harleen skinned her knee or bumped her head. But when they saw her daddy's face, they changed completely. Well, if it isn't good old Slick Nick Quinzel, said the taller cop as he and his partner lifted her daddy to his feet. Be careful, don't hurt him, Harleen shouted. Pipe down, kid, your old man's okay, the taller cop said. Hey, Nick, you got any idea how many people are looking for you? He pulled her daddy's arms behind him. Thinking the cop was going to hold daddy so the other cop could punch him, Harleen leaped at him, flailing her fists wildly. Take it easy, kid, the shorter cop said as he pulled her away. We're just cuffing him so we can take him in. Nobody's gonna hurt him. But he's already hurt. You're supposed to help people, Harleen sobbed. The cops looked at each other, then at her daddy. Are you hurt, sir? The taller cop asked in a stiff, formal tone. Do you require medical attention? Daddy spat blood and said, It's just a scratch. He says it's just a scratch, the taller cop told Harleen. They put her daddy in the back seat of the squad car and let her sit with him. She held him all the way to the police station, but he couldn't put his arms around her, and that was scary. At the police station, the cops handed her and daddy over to a couple of detectives. One was older, with dark brown skin and watery eyes, large behind the lenses of his black framed glasses. Here and there, in his short, curly black hair, were single white ones, like someone had sprinkled little white threads all over his head. He introduced himself as Detective Jack Thibodeau. His partner, Brian Lee, was Chinese. He had longer hair tied back in a ponytail, and under other circumstances, Harleen would have had a crush on him. He was kind to her, but his face was so serious she couldn't help being a little afraid of him. Neither detective was dressed very well. Their clothes were so rumpled. Mommy would have said they must have slept in them. Maybe they didn't know about how to dress for an important job like Harleen's teacher said you were supposed to, or maybe they just didn't care. If so, none of the other detectives did either. Worse though, they said her daddy was a bad guy, and that couldn't possibly be true. A bad guy wouldn't take her to Coney Island for the day and ride all the rides and play all the games with her. Millie at the diner said her daddy had a big heart. No one would say that about a bad guy, and a bad guy wouldn't carry her all the way home. Bad guys never did that stuff. They were too busy doing bad things. The detectives kept calling her daddy a con man. Harleen had no idea what that was. She suspected it was something the cops had just made up to be mean. They claimed her daddy was behind a series of robberies and had planned one at a nightclub owned by a rich lady. But then he double-crossed the other bad guys, and now everyone was looking for him. Bad guys, good guys, any guys, all the guys. Harleen tried to tell her daddy, Harley tried to tell them her daddy couldn't have done anything wrong because he'd been having fun all day with her at Coney Island. She started to tell them for what seemed like the 1,000th time and about everything they'd done together. Her daddy was sitting on a chair next to Detective Thibodeau's desk, and he suddenly pulled her onto his lap. "Let me talk to her," he said to the detectives and swiveled so they were facing away from them. Harleen wrapped her arms around his neck. And again, glad he wasn't handcuffed anymore, so he could hug her back. "Honey, these guys are just doing their job," he said, speaking barely above a whisper. "But they can't do anything if you keep interrupting." "But," Harleen started, "but nothing." Daddy pressed his finger against her lips. "This is going to take a little while, so you have to be my good girl and be patient, okay?" "You want me to call your wife to come get her?" Detective Thibodeau asked. Daddy turned back to him with Harleen still on his lap and shook his head. "No, Sharon needs her sleep. We've got 3 in diapers at home." He looked around, then pointed at an empty bench along the nearest wall. "Harleen, how about you sit over there and wait for me?" She heaved an enormous sigh. "Okay. And maybe the detectives could find someone to sit with you," Daddy added. Detective Lee took Harleen's hand and walked her over to the bench. "I know you don't understand what's going on," he said as he sat down next to her. "Yeah, I do," she said. "You're being mean to my daddy." "That's not..." The detective stopped, hesitated. "We don't want to be mean to your daddy," he said. "But your daddy has been mean to people. A lot of people." "My daddy's never mean!" Harleen informed him, although she couldn't help squirming a little because that wasn't quite true. Sometimes he was mean to Mommy, and Mommy was mean right back. "Your daddy stole money that didn't belong to him," Detective Lee told her. "He stole jewelry, too, and other very valuable things. Stealing is a very mean thing to do." Harleen's urge to squirm vanished. The detective was trying to make her feel bad toward her daddy, and that was wrong. He was her daddy. She looked up at him, and she saw that he was waiting for her to agree with him that her daddy was mean. Well, he could wait forever. She'd never say that. "It's wrong to steal, isn't it?" the detective prodded. "It's wrong and it's mean, isn't it? Your daddy was mean to steal, wasn't he?" Harleen sat up a little straighter. Something she'd overheard her mother say popped into her head. "They can spare it." Detective Lee's expression changed from serious to startled. He hadn't seen that coming. Harleen thought. Without another word, he got up and went back to his partner and her daddy, and she knew he was telling them what she'd said, like it was some great big deal. Detective Thibodeau gave her a sidelong look. Maybe he was thinking about handcuffing her too. But her daddy only shrugged. "She's right, they can," he said and winked at her. A secret wink that made her feel better, but only for a few seconds. The detectives just kept at him, asking him the same questions over and over. Harleen wanted to ask them a few questions, like, was this really their job? How did it make them good guys? Daddy still had blood all over his face and his clothes, and it was getting later and later, and she felt like her eyeballs were coated with sand, and now she had to go to the bathroom. She probably had to get special permission for that. Maybe they'd want to handcuff her, even though the ladies was really close. She could see it from where she was sitting. Harleen tried to get someone's attention, but everyone was too busy. Even her daddy was facing away from her, talking to a third detective. Finally, she just couldn't wait. It was probably a crime to pee your pants in a police station anyway. Nobody tried to stop her as she went into the bathroom, which smelled like it had just been hosed down with double-strength bleach. Afterward, Harleen started to go back to the bench, then hesitated. No one seemed to have noticed she wasn't there anymore. They were all too busy. Detectives were bringing in other people in handcuffs and sitting them down next to desks. Once she would have taken it for granted people in handcuffs were bad guys, but now she knew better. Cops made mistakes, but they never owned up to being wrong. They just kept saying they were right until they forced everyone else to say they were right too. Harleen looked over at her father and the detectives. How many times would they ask him the same questions? Were they going for a world record? This wasn't how the best day ever was supposed to end. Her daddy was supposed to take her home and put her to bed. She'd be so knocked out, she'd sleep through the argument he and mommy would have about his keeping her out so late. Instead, her daddy got punched out by some bad guys, and when she brought the police, they treated him like he was the bad guy. None of them cared her daddy was hurt. No one had said, that was wrong. They shouldn't have done that to you. Everybody said cops were supposed to protect and help people. Harleen saw now that they only helped some people. Whoever those people were, she and Daddy weren't included. The swinging double doors marked exit weren't locked or even guarded. Cops and detectives were going in and out, sometimes with prisoners. Harleen remembered her daddy saying you could go anywhere you wanted as long as you looked like you knew what you were doing. I'm supposed to do this, she said silently as she headed for the double doors. I'm right where I should be. I'm official. Don't worry. I'm not the droid you're looking for. No one gave her a second look as she went downstairs, out the front entrance and onto the street. Harleen made herself walk at the same confident, unhurried pace until she was almost a block away from the station house. Then she broke into a run. And that ends chapter 1. See, we got a lot of notes to put in. This might be a book where I need to take notes as we read, like we did with Senzu, because, geez, that was a lot, and I don't want to like accidentally miss things. Nathan's is the real brand. The BTAC one was Nateman's, and guess it's one of those Star Trek things. Both have been said. Yeah, Nathan's hot dogs are famous around Coney Island with the foot-long hot dogs. In search of followers, primes, and views? Come on, big follows blank com. I'm going to say the parentheses in case you didn't get it. Hey, get out of here, you bot. James, are you able to kick that bot? It's okay, you can give them the same voice. Lots of potential out of context daddy quotes to mine here. I was thinking that the whole time. Stealing is a very mean thing to do. Base. Damn, this is some grade A childhood trauma. Oh, for sure. I'm like reading this. I've been saying that I want to do a video on police and the DCAU, and I feel like this just gave me some shit to work with. So that's exciting. Jesus. Okay, so we had we can get rid of the experienced professional here, because now we know that's Slick Nick Quinzel. Who was given a name here. His wife is like the next character mentioned, but we don't get her name until much later, and it was Sharon. And then we had 3 baby Quinzel brothers that are not named. We got Ice Capades at Madison Square Garden. Ice Capades is capitalized, but that's not an object. I don't know if there's somewhere to logically fit Ice Capades. Let's see. We got the Wonder Wheel. I'm gonna put carnival attractions as objects, I guess, because like carnivals are mobile usually. So, let's see. We got the Wonder Wheel. We got let's see. This morning she had been resigned to another Saturday changing diapers. Okay, so you know it's obviously the next day. And that was page 4. Oh, that's not the right. That's not a parenthesis. See, she and Daddy rode the Q line is capitalized. Q line. I guess I could put Q line as an object. I guess it's probably technically a place, but so long as it's here, we can make those distinctions later. Oh, I didn't capitalize Q line. Then we got Nathan's Hot Dogs. And we got a lot of carnival attractions. We had the lobster pot pyramid smash. And we got grab a duck. Alright, what was this Aussie? Daddy won them together. Daddy asked her to take care of his ostrich for him because he worked so much and he didn't want Ozzy to get lonely. Okay, so we named her dad's stuffed ostrich, but we didn't name her stuffed monkey. I would assume that if it were to be named, it would probably be Beppo, because that's where they love going, but I'm not gonna speculate on that for too long. Let's see. Lady on Electrified Throne. Yeah, so we've got our what you call it, our sideshow freaks, which in my head I want them to be the team from Sideshow. But I don't think that it adds up just based off the description. Let's see, Lady on Electrified Throne. Flexible lady. I'm just trying to shorten their descriptions. We have a mention of Harley's gymnastics teacher. Yeah, there's definitely like a lot of stuff here that this is gonna need to be a take notes as I read book. A guy who hammered a nail right into his face and didn't even bleed. It's fuck. I mean, nail in face guy, I guess. Let's see. Then we have the fun house is capitalized. I'll put that into objects. Let's see. Workroom. And I think now we're at the diner. NY. Which I guess is it probably a playoff of New York, but it's spelled EN-WHY. And we got a mention of Brooklyn accents, so Brooklyn exists. What was the lady's name? Was it Millie? Millie, yes. See, then we had the two crooks, but I'm gonna assume that they were the robbers from above, since they are talking about that. We found out you were there on Thursday. Which is on page 9. Then we had the two cops that Harley flagged down. Then we had Detective Jack Thibodeau, which I wanna look up these names, because I assume that they might be folks that his partner Brian Lee, they might be, you know, based on real people or based on something within the lore of DC Comics, or it might even be like, you know, pop culture references. I think that's really, you know, I guess I can put the police station as a location, but it doesn't specify anything past it being, you know, a police station. I assume it would be like a New York police station, but there are plenty of different stations, so who knows. And then pop culture, we got I'm not the droid you're looking for, right? That's the first Star Wars, right? Was it the first or was it the second? I'm pretty sure it was the first, but I'm not as you know, familiar with those movies as most people with my amount of nerd cred would be. So Harley's 7 years old in a world that Star Wars exists. She's supposed to be like the same age as Poison Ivy, right? That's something that you know, Paul Dini has said a time or two, and I think Poison Ivy's 28. Oh my god. Why actual Poison Ivy? Hop over to the chat. Chat pause due to scroll. Well, none of that is what I was wanting to look for. There's an episode in Pretty Poison, like he pulls up Pamela Isley's file. Fun and Game also had a bad cop shit like this too. Stuffed animals exist. Good to know. Good to know. It's probably Beppo. They love Beppo. It's still is it still like a novel? Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is a novel. The Return of the Vanishing Point, figuring out timeline of Mad Love. It may be complicated as all timeline content is because it's Thursday. Still, Return of the Vanishing Point will be epic. We might bring it back someday, depending on where our story takes us, as well as, you know, how much content we feel we need to push out. Geez, where's the... I want her... Why does this not just come up? I know I've seen it on... Whatever. There's like an episode of Batman the Animated Series that has her driver's license on it, and I think it says she's like 28. So if she's 28 in 1993, and if Harley's the same age, that would mean Harley was born in 1973, 1965. So to be 7 years old would be 1972. But Star Wars, the first one, that was what, 79? Not Empire Strikes Back. I just put in Star Wars. 1977. So it might not line up, you know, correctly with the at least with Paul Dini's, you know, outside thing saying that they're the same age. You know, maybe she's a little bit younger now, which is fine. You know, if she's 7 years old by 1977, that would mean she's born in 1970. So she'd be 23 by the time of Pretty Poison and 24 by the time of the Mad Love flashbacks, I think. Because I think we said those are 94. I would have to double check. But no, I did want to look up before we get out of here. The Detective Jack Thibodeau guy. Oh, interesting. This spells it differently in the autofill. Well, it brings up a dead guy. Let me make sure I spell it correctly, because that's it did not have an X. Thibodeau. And let me put Jack Thibodeau in quotation marks. Okay, so we've got Harley Quinn is coming up. Mainly because I guess as part of the press, they released the first chapter or so. There is another Jack Thibodeau who looks like he's the creation of a Monique Thibault. I don't know if maybe Monique and Pat Cadigan have some kind of working relationship or something, maybe. Because if they do, maybe she's bringing over someone else's character. And if that's the case, that's interesting. But it doesn't look like that's the case. Let me take out the Mary. So it's possible they just made up this name, and I'm just going on a wild goose chase because that's what I've been doing for the past 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, however long I've been doing this. Okay, no. Doesn't look like there's anything there. So I guess that would mean Brian Lee is also probably... Well, there you have it. Jack Thibodeau doesn't matter. Are they Mad Love original characters? Yeah, I'm guessing that they're probably original to this novel. I was just expecting them to, because like when you're writing something that's like in an established canon, like you would with a DC or a Marvel book or what have you, it's always to your advantage to fan service underdeveloped characters that also exist in that canon, right? So like a beat cop from, you know, XYZ Batman comic or whatever that like only showed up there, just grab that name and be like, boom, this is actually a pre-established character and here's some more of their story. Take that, you fans, this is canon now, kind of stuff. We got that a little bit in I want to say the Rise of Sinzu novelization, though it escapes me off the top of my head which characters I could be referring to, but I'm pretty sure we got some of that in there. So like, you know, it just happens, like even say with Ty Templeton, like he always puts a guy named Lenny into his books, and it changes, like, you know, what he's doing from point A to point B, just as a way of, you know, connecting things and having, you know, less important characters kind of living and breathing in the background. BRB gonna shoehorn Commissioner Gordon, but only the CW Gotham version, right? That's what I was anticipating at first, was for them to bring in Commissioner Gordon, but I guess technically we are in New York City instead of Gotham right now, and I'm sure we will get there. I'm sure we will, you know, end up in Gotham, and they do both coexist in the DCAU, at least if you take like Batman Adventures Volume 2 into as canon, because, you know, it shows both Gotham and New York to exist. That's the one thing off the top of my head that definitely does that, but I don't know if there's any other precedent for that, I guess, except for this now, if this does end up fitting in the DCAU. But yeah, so that's chapter 1. Hopefully next time we can go through more than one chapter, but they look to be about the same size, so I don't know that we will. God, if it's gonna be one chapter a week, this is gonna be a 34-week book. That's the majority of a year, so that'll be fun. Maybe I will do longer streams. I know we're talking about potentially changing the schedule on streams to be able to reach a wider audience. If we do that, maybe I will expand the length of my stream, because usually, you know, going on at noon, it's kind of cutting into lunchtime, and I like eating, you know. There's a reason I was 226 pounds earlier this year. So it just makes it, you know, less likely for me to stay on the fact that we do them around lunchtime right now, right? Because either I'm eating on screen with y'all or I'm hopping off early to go get food. But that's all, you know, stuff that James, Ted, and I have to discuss, and nothing for y'all to worry y'all's little heads about. So yeah, that's the end of where we are today. Next week we will pick up with chapter 2, and see where Harley's going. The very first words are years later, so I guess it's not gonna be right outside of the police department. It's going to be on the other end of the time portal that she jumped into when she walked out of the police department. But yeah, y'all, you know what? Have a good day. I will see you next week. You'll see me actually this Sunday in a video that we're doing on Batman trading cards. So yeah, y'all take care. Have a blast. I'll see y'all next time. Mwah. Love ya.